Driving is a privilege and a skill that's part of everyday life for many across North America. But like all privileges, it can be taken away, and in some cases for reasons that have nothing to do with what goes on behind the wheel.
There are a variety of suspensions on the books across the state for suspending the license that are not related to driving. Theft, vandalism offenses, child support recovery or failure to pay child support. There's actually a law on the books in one state where failure to renew the vaccine tags on your pet can actually result in a driver's license suspension.
The research tells us that approximately 39% of all suspended drivers were suspended for a non-driving reason. That's approximately 4 in 10. What we also know is that each year state legislatures pass new reasons to suspend a driver's license, many of those reasons being for non-driving reasons.
AAMVA's Suspended and Revoked Working Group has been researching the reasoning behind suspending and revoking driver's licenses and the effect those actions have on both the AAMVA community and on road safety.
Suspension of the driver's license has been used for many years in order to bring poor drivers into compliance. But it's evolved over time into becoming something that is used to gain social conformance, to try to get people to improve their behavior for non-driving related reasons. And as that has continued to evolve, it's actually really put a tax or a burden onto the judicial system, the DMVs, the courts, law enforcement officials, anyone involved in that process.
Here's what we know. Every year there are more and more suspended drivers on our roadways. We also know that approximately 75% of the people with a suspended license continue to drive. So the working group looked at what is it we can do to reduce the number of suspended drivers on our roadways.
The working group's research showed that someone who is suspended for a driving reason is 3 times more likely to be in a crash than someone who is suspended for a non-driving reason.
So that lends credence to the notion that perhaps we should only be suspending those people that were suspended for a driving reason. It is a traffic safety issue. We recommend that states repeal laws currently on the books that require suspension for non-driving reasons. If hypothetically every jurisdiction adopted that policy, we would reduce the number of suspended drivers on our roads by 40%.
And 40% fewer suspended drivers on the roads would translate into savings for many, from DMVs to law enforcement agencies and even the court system.
That would make my field forces a lot more efficient because we would not have to sift through what the reason for the suspension was and react according to that. We can focus on the driving behaviors that got people suspended in the first place and take it away from things like overdue library fines or other civil, non-criminal or driving-related offenses.
I think it's a big problem. It's an industry-wide problem. It's a drain on the courts as well, in having to deal with driving while suspended issues for matters other than traffic-related matters. We're all in this economic time dealing with shortages, so our prosecutor's office could devote more time and attention to serious matters other than dealing with individuals suspended for non-moving violations. So it's a drain on the system as a whole.
I haven't been a prosecutor. Being in a DMV now, I've seen, and anecdotally I think we all know, that the court system has, the dockets are full. There's more to be done than can be accomplished with the resources available. And that strain is equally felt by the law enforcement community also, and really every part of the judicial process.
Each year we're actually reducing our budget and reducing our overall workforce. So having additional duties on top of our normal, legally required DMV-related duties is definitely a drain on our resources.
Well, I've done a little math on our cases in the state of Missouri for the Missouri State Highway Patrol. In 2011, we as an agency made 9,737 driving while revoked suspended arrests. So if you reduce that by 39%, that's 3,797 fewer arrests that our officers would be making. Again, if that's a 2-hour time process to process those arrests, we're looking at a savings of 7,594 hours. Now, if you divide that by 8, that's 949 days over the course of a year that our officers would save.
AAMVA's Suspended and Revoked Working Group has put together some resources to help members advocate for fewer non-highway safety-related suspensions and revocations. A document called the Best Practices Guide to Reducing Suspended Drivers, and a template for model legislation.
And the guide is intended to help the jurisdictions go to their state legislatures with both the premise and the supporting rationale for not suspending for non-driving reasons. This is not intended to repeal any federal laws currently in existence, the most noteworthy being that for child support. This is really targeting the state laws that require suspension for non-driving reasons.
It's all depending upon the statute changes. Right now there's a lot of different suspensions that are tied to activities that are not related to driving. And the reasons are primarily to encourage some behavior, some payment of a fee or a fine to show up in court. I'm just not convinced that it's tying it to driver licensing and driver privileges is necessarily the best sanction that should be put in place.
By reducing the number of suspended license offenses that are out there, we do two things. One, we go back and legitimize the offense in the first place, where there's so many ways to get suspended having nothing to do with driving, and so many suspended drivers out there. It really tends to lessen the seriousness of the offense and across the board in society's mind as well. And then secondly, we can free up resources to do the things that they're really there to do. We don't want to have a law enforcement officer unavailable to answer a major 911 call because he's tied up on the side of the road writing a ticket for suspended license where the underlying suspension is for overdue library book.
If you're busy with something that really isn't traffic safety related, you're taking time away from traffic safety. So if you take your typical officer who may be 50 miles from a jail or have to wait 45 minutes for a tow truck and they're engaged in that activity for 4 hours, then they're 4 hours away from enforcing other laws like DUI, like serious driving while suspended or speeding or those things that kill people. So that is a serious consideration.